Now, for our feature presentation.
So we watched a movie.
We did.
We did watch a movie. We watched the movie Seven.
Yeah, starring Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and Kevin Spacey.
You could say it starred Gwyneth Paltrow, but that would be an absolute lie.
She's in like a total of 8 minutes.
8 glorious minutes of 1990s Gwyneth Paltrow. Always appreciate that.
Of forced character development that didn't actually pan out.
Just never panned out. You know, Morgan Freeman, pretty much just the old cliche, the I'm too old for this shit. You know, weather-worn
everything.
Yeah.
Somerset just kind of trying to piece out on everything. Gets drawn back in because it's just too good of a puzzle.
Yep. I don't know if it was cliche back then when it was made, but it's definitely cliche now.
Well,
this movie just, like you said, walked us through the entire thing. There wasn't anything that was super surprising.
Yeah.
I mean, the twist at the end was obviously a good twist.
It wasn't a bad twist at all.
You could see it coming from like a mile away.
I do think that is kind of a good point to go off of, where it is a pretty blatant hand-holding through the entire film, which no knock on that. It's fine that they didn't want people being confused at their movie. But I think as far as the plot, like the overall story of the movie, I think right up front it's not a shallow plot, but the movie's called Seven. It's based on the seven deadly sins. Not a lot to say. Brad Pitt, filled in his cliched role of the young, up-and-coming newbie cop very well.
Yeah, wasn't outstanding, but wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Very much played the
He
part.
had the emotions. I was going to say he had the emotional range for the movie that he needed to. Again, I'm not a huge Brad Pitt fan, so it's hard for me to give credit where credit is due, but I feel like the performance was, at minimum, quite adequate.
I think Morgan Freeman killed it as always. I feel like at the end with the twist where Mills goes into the wrath, I didn't feel like it was heartbreaking enough. It was just kind of a what's going on, some dread, but it wasn't. I never really saw it hit him. I just saw him go crazy.
That was easily his best scene, his best acted scene throughout the entire movie, but I agree. Like there wasn't enough emotion. Plus, your connection to Gwyneth Paltrow's character just wasn't there.
Exactly.
But, and this is the most important question of the film, as everyone knows, what's in the box?
What is in the box?
What's in the box?
First, you cut a hole in the box.
Gwyneth Paltrow's dick is in the box.
That would be
quite the twist.
Yeah, I would have probably liked that movie a little bit more.
It would be M. Night Shyamalan.
Shyamalan ding dong. Kevin Spacey, John Doe.
Killed it.
Very good, Kevin Spacey.
Yeah. Good at playing a psychopath.
Is a very good, exactly what I was going to say. Very good at playing a psychopath. You can look at a movie he did earlier the same year, The Usual Suspects, where he played Kaiser Soze. And, I mean, if it wasn't for the internet being just a landmine of spoilers for movies, I wouldn't have known, well, I probably would have, but I can pretend that I wouldn't have known going into The Usual Suspects that Kevin Spacey is Kaiser Soze. And Kaiser Soze is John Doe. They're the same character. I picked up on that. It's probably something kind of silly that I noticed, but I feel like it's the same person.
I feel like Kaiser Soze in The Usual Suspects was a little bit more manipulative, and I want to say less insane than John Doe's character. However, there's a lot of parallels between the two characters. Yeah, they like the character probably believed themselves to be a martyr. I mean, obviously for his own cause, he called himself Envy and that he deserved to die, even though his reasoning wasn't very good. Yeah, it wasn't very believable. Yeah.
He kind of tried to sell the whole envy part of it, but it was all for his own fame and to be talked about and to be remembered.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, that is kind of an out of character thing. If you think about it, kind of, it's all this God's mission, etc. But he's self-aggrandizing the whole way through, even though he doesn't really want to admit it. Like, even putting himself as part of the plan, I feel like that's self-aggrandizing. Just it's kind of the whole way through, which is, not a huge plot hole, but it is kind of a
just out of theme.
It doesn't really seem to fit in. Another thing that I noticed, I think you guys felt the same way, was that when they finally found John Doe's apartment and he's standing down the hall and he sees Mills and Somerset, and his reaction is to pull a firearm and start to shoot.
Yeah, it's very out of character.
It's completely out of character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for a charming psychopath, he would have a way to either charm himself out of it or avoid the situation.
Yeah.
Because that's... To go straight to violence doesn't seem to be the way.
Obviously, they broke some pretty severe privacy laws to find him, but they could never lean on that information. And he knows there's no way they could have found him otherwise. Yeah. So, obviously...
I mean,
there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, they even mention in the movie that he read books on law.
He should have been plenty versed. There was no reason for him to panic, and that outburst was definitely out of character.
With him picking Mills as Wrath, and him being envious of Mills when he couldn't have been a target when he first started the killing because... Mills wasn't...
Well, yeah, he started the killings over 3 years ago. Or he started not the killings per se, but the plan.
The planning.
Because Sloth had been bound up for
a year.
A year. So
a year to the day.
A year to the day. So, obviously, Wrath was never firmly picked out, but I don't believe that necessarily any of them were firmly picked out until they died. I think when they died, or when he planned the murder, is when they were firmly picked out. And he alludes to it in the film. He admits he has to move his timeline, and it's going to make some changes. So I do believe he was always going to be Envy. Pride was always going to be Pride. I think he was still figuring Wrath, and he did. He figured it just fine.
Because
kind of.
Mills kind of just fell into his lap in that. He realized
Which they definitely foreshadowed the whole way there.
Yeah, like immediately Mills is arrogant, and he's... doesn't have complete control over his emotions. They make that very clear from the beginning.
Yeah, there's a line Morgan Freeman says, it's just nice to see someone feeding off their emotions, or strange to see someone feeding off their emotions. Like, oh, okay, so his emotions are going to come into play. They're going to come back to haunt him in some way or another. I think all the way along he wanted to be challenged, so he left a little breadcrumb here, and a little breadcrumb here that you could kind of tie together, and that's when you could see, oh my goodness, this is related, this is the same thing.
Yeah, I think he knew that he didn't want them to put just any old homicide detective on the case. He wanted their best.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's why he did just really off-the-wall clues leading up through each of his murders.
At least the first three.
Yeah, and then once he was figured out, it kind of fell apart there.
Sped through the rest of them.
So, obviously, we watched the movie yesterday, and we kind of had a roundtable discussion between the three of us, mostly the two of us, obviously, but between us, we had a roundtable discussion, and we kind of lobbied a theory about what if, in John Doe's eyes, all of his victims actually did have a choice? Do you think that's something that, if they had chosen to not succumb to their sins in those moments, even though he was brandishing the gun, he would have let them live anyway?
Well,
like, you have the chance to die pure and quick, or you can be tortured to death in your own sin.
Okay.
So, and all of them chose to be tortured to death in their own sin. It's like one of the first, decent jump scares when you found out Sloth was actually still alive in the bed.
Oh, yeah. And they even foreshadowed to that.
I was just going to make sure you made that point.
Yeah. When they were going to... Was it Gluttony? Oh, yeah, because they were talking about if he could start breathing spaghetti. He was going to Gluttony, and he was like, are you sure he's dead? I'm like... Yeah, we're pretty sure. Yeah. And then he's like, well, I just wonder how many times people go into a crime scene and they're not actually dead and nobody checks. And later in the movie, that's exactly what happens.
But in that case, they were not going into a crime scene. They were going to apprehend the person that they thought was committing the crimes because of the
fingerprint.
The fingerprints at the greed. But same principle, because they're talking about him as if he were dead.
Yeah.
Talking about, well, and I mean, there's no way
Dr. Cox is all like, you deserved it. And once
John C. McGinley. I got you, Dr. Cox.
Fun facts. We got some facts, and they're fun.
Fun facts.
They're facts, and they're fun.
Yeah. Film was directed by David Fickner. David Fickner is a genius, apparently, when it comes to these movies. I had not heard of David Fickner before today, but just a quick look at other films he's directed. Gone Girl, psychological thriller.
Great movie. Yep.
Exactly, very good movie. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I believe that there are some pretty strong psychological themes to that film as well.
Some dark stuff too.
He directed The Social Network, which is a very good movie, not
A psychological thriller.
a psychological thriller. Curious Case of Benjamin Button is a long movie. It's also, I did enjoy that one, but...
Is it Brad Pitt in that one too?
Yes, he's a big fan of Brad Pitt and Kevin Spacey. Zodiac, so basically this exact movie. Fight Club, Panic Room. He's definitely directed some good things. It looks like...
So he's in this genre. He is in this genre.
Yeah, he's really, really in here, carrying the load for this genre. Sylvester Stallone turned down the role of Mills.
That's probably a good thing.
A very good call, in my opinion.
So this was in reference to that scene that kind of, I feel, we all really liked with the knife penis wielding gentleman, Leland Orser.
Yeah, he was also in Saving Private Ryan. He was the,
but I haven't seen it, so.
Yeah, he was the pilot that was the pilot of the crashed airplane that they come up with. The main company comes up on. He says, they bolted steel plates to the bottom of the plane. I wish they would have fucking told us before we took off. But yeah, he also played kind of a jittery character right there too. So he plays a very good, emotionally damaged.
A wreck. He plays a wreck very well.
Yeah.
Another person that passed on the role of Detective Mills was Denzel Washington, citing that the movie was too dark and evil. Later stated that he regrets that decision. And sure, he's fine either way.
Yeah, he did not miss out on
We're
much.
not sitting here talking about who is Denzel Washington. We are very aware of his work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys did notice this. IMDb pointed it out. I noticed it myself as well. With Kevin Spacey, he's not in the opening credits at all. Mm-hmm. They did. It was a really cool idea to really keep that under lock and key. What his role was, that he was even in the film. Be a lot harder to do in this day and age, but I thought that was a really cool thing that they did.
I did not notice that. That's cool.
Budget for this film, an estimated $33 million US.
Or bank.
It grossed $100,125,643.
About 67 million profit. That's pretty. Pretty.
I would imagine that for a film in '95, that would be quite acceptable.
Yeah, tripled its money.
Opening weekend was 11 million UK, so I don't know what that would be, but I don't care.
Guillermo del Toro turned down the chance to direct.
I saw that.
The makeup for the sloth victim
I think that
took
was good.
over 14 hours.
Fuck.
Oh.
Yeah. I think Ryan Reynolds said his entire Deadpool makeup takes about 8 hours to do.
I think for the little bit that Sloth did, they could have just used like
a doll.
Some sort of animatronic puppet.
I'm kind of glad they did just use an actor for it, because I think
it would have it would have looked cheesy.
Yeah, an animatronic, especially back in '95, would have definitely been noticeable.
Good point, sir.
Al Pacino and Denzel Washington were early choices for Somerset and Mills. Pacino declined. He was already scheduled to film City Hall, and Washington turned down because of the too dark that we already pointed out. Not necessarily he, because Same score as Silence of the Lambs. Howard Shore. Gene Hackman offered the role of Somerset, turned it down because of too many night shoots.
Well,
Overall, not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. Done decently well. Just kind of there. Good movie, not a terrible movie. 6.5 out of 10.
All right. Some things that we talked about, Tyson, was just kind of how you realized that it wasn't as deep as you thought it was when you watched it before watching it with the more critical eye. Is that it's not actually as deep of a film as you thought it was. And again, that's no disrespect. It is a good film, but it's not like the earth-bending, mind-shaking thriller that you might consider it to be. Mm-hmm. And we kind of equated it to the not saying that it's the same, not saying that it is Saw, but this is where Saw came from. That's kind of what we equated it to. Yeah. It's a psychological thriller with a good gore aspect. If you look at Saw 1, there was a lot of people that didn't see the twist of Saw 1. It's a psychological thriller with a gore aspect. So I think that it was kind of the lineage, the base of the family tree for a lot of those films that came after it. As we discussed what kind of rating scale we would do for the film, and you suggested 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10, or out of 10, and I said that we should do it out of 10 because I wanted to give this film a 7 out of 10. So yeah, we're all terrible people. And how about yourself? What did you think? Obviously, as the seasoned veteran of 7.
7. I always enjoy watching it. I mean, I don't really find anything different nowadays because I've seen it a couple dozen times. But it really began my love of psychological horror movies or psychological thrillers. Is very well done. Twist ending is classic. I mean, it's joked about, but like fondly because it was one of the original twist endings that was very well done. It, like you said, inspired movies like Saw, and yeah, overall, very good movie. I would also give it a 7 out of 10, unironically. Mm-hmm.
All right, you guys. well, I think this was a good first podcast. Thanks for listening out there, and as always, what's in the box?